this guitar is ready for the setup. That means that it's already been strung for presentation. It's a gorgeous looking guitar, no question about it. But to play it and to make it nice and playable is a whole different thing. So the setup refers to getting these strings the right height and the fretboard all in the right place, the frets in the right height so that it doesn't have any buzz in it. It will include getting the neck straight, leveling the frets, lowering the strings to the proper height here, and the saddle at the right height also. Now I'm going to be following a guide here that you should also have access to. And we've got two ways of doing this. One is a fast setup, about 30 minutes long, which is, like it says, it's kind of fast and dirty. It's not the end all, but it'll get you close. And then there's a thorough setup. That's about a 4-hour job to get this really in tune. And it's the thorough setup that I intend to demonstrate for you right now, and you can follow along and do it to your guitar. Now this can be done by a professional also. It costs about $100, and there's many guitar shops in the city that will do it for you. Okay, so I'm going to first, I'm working from this sheet. First, let's loosen the strings and remove the bridge pins. We need access to all of this. Now, I don't need to completely take the strings off. I just need to pull them off like this, and then I'll pull those pins out. I'm going to do 3 off of this side, and then I'll do 3 off the other side. And I don't want to scratch my pins, so use something to buffer the jaws of your pliers. Okay, good. Now I have access. I'm going to put a hold up underneath it, and notice I've cushioned my guitar with this blanket. You could use a towel or a sheet or whatever, just so that I'm not scratching against anything. I want to protect this beautiful specimen. Okay, next, I've got to check flat here with a straight edge, and this is a milled straight. I could use some other type of straight edge, even a piece of wood that has been jointed. And come down here and look and see what I'm looking at. So I'm touching here the fret, but as I come down, I'm missing here by a little bit. There. Can you see the air through? And it's kind of that way, so there's a little bit of this going on. And then it touches again about in here. And then from here down, it kind of has a little more drastic drop. In fact, there's probably a full 32nd, if not more, on this final fret up here, and that's okay. I'm mostly worried about the 14th fret up, so where it connects to the neck. This is called fall off, and it's okay if there's a little bit. That's better than the opposite, that is coming up. So to adjust this, so it's going like this, from there to there, just a little bit. I'm going to adjust the truss rod, thereby making the neck bow a little bit up, or flat, is what I'm after. So remove that cover. get access to this. And I'm looking down it, and I can see the bow in it from there to there, looking down the corner of the fretboard. So by turning this, I'm hoping to change that a little bit. So I'm going to the right now, and I feel it start to be tight, which means it's starting to do its job. The opposite direction would pull it back into a bow. Now that does look better. And I'm not going to get it perfect. That's hard to do. Some fretboards and nicks are that way, but most of them aren't. So now I'm rechecking it to see how it looks. So now I've almost got just the opposite problem. I have a high fret here, and I can rock it back and forth. I feel the click, so I went a little too far. I'm going to back it off some. Now, you can adjust the rod so much that you actually break it, though difficult to do that. You have to be really cranking on it. So that feels pretty good. I'm not feeling any rock on it, and I still have a slight gap on some of them, but that's doable. That's good. So that's done. I can put the truss rod cover back on. Okay, number 3. Tape off the frets double thick to protect the fretboard. So I'm using masking tape, and I'm going to be leveling these frets. And filing and sanding. So this is to make sure that I don't harm the fretboard. I forgot to do one thing. If you tape off one piece along the length of it like this, it's much easier to remove the pieces later. Go too thick. Okay. Now I'm going to come across them. Two layers. We don't want to be harming that fretboard in any way. And we're going to be running files across them and sandpaper. When I get down to here, and I can't, I can crumple up the masking tape, but I'm just going to move to a thinner masking tape. So a 1/4 inch or a 3/8 maybe, this is wide. And that'll be easier for sure. Still a little bit too wide for these, and so I'll have to crumple it together a little bit. Okay, Chris, why don't you pause there? Finished taping off the fretboard. Double thick, so that I don't harm anything with later sandpaper. Take a Sharpie And red works great, blue works great, even black can work. Just a little easier to see this red. And I'm marking the top of it so that as we sand them, we know what has been removed and what has not been removed. Eventually, we'll sand off all of this color. Okay. Sand frets with an 18-inch radius sanding block. Sanding beam. So this goes all the way, right? It covers the full fretboard. That's what's critical about this. And it has a radius. The radius is not a perfect match to this particular fretboard. We have a 10-inch on this. This is a 12-inch. So there's a slight difference. But we can deal with that just fine. On this is 220 grit sandpaper. So what I'm doing is, sanding those frets. And you can see right where I'm starting to remove material. So there's some on the corners there. Here it's right there. Here it's right there. There it's up a little farther. Here it's just on the ends. And that's good. That's what we're trying to do, is level off these frets so they're all flush all the way down the fretboard. If this was the exact radius, I could just go like this until it was done. Since it's not the exact radius, I'm going to be rolling it slightly as we go. So I'll be doing here, and then I'll shift it over there, then I'll shift it like this to try to get it balanced out. And if you pop your nut off, which is possible, that's okay. It'll go back on. And I'm trying to sand as little as possible. The less I have to sand now, the less work I have later to re-crown them, right? Because I'm flattening out in this area. There's probably a 3/64 16th of an inch wide of flatness there. And that I have to bring to a point again later. Now I'm noticing that I'm not hitting anything on this part of the fretboard. Like I'm hitting this fret, barely this one, but nothing here. And that's because of the fall off. This whole portion is slightly lower. It drops a little bit. And that's actually a good thing or an okay thing as opposed to the other way. Right? Think of what's happening here. When you pluck a string, bung, it vibrates and it can't hit any of those frets. So if one of them is high, it'll hit the fret and cause buzzing. So if it's too low in this area, that's okay. These are not as used as much. Called fall off. I've got almost everything except for one little spot right here. And even there, it's not too bad. It's, I see a little bit, so I'm gonna just a little bit more. I'm happy with that. Now my fall off here, I'm going to try and get it separately. And you can even use a smaller block just to get those. So I've got those two, and I've got that one. These two I haven't reached yet. And you might be worried because these are flattened out pretty significantly. I've now hit that one just barely, so I feel pretty good about this. Okay, so if I was to pull my straight edge across here now, I should be touching every single one of those frets, which I am doing, except for up here, or fall off. And up here, if I move it down, that's all touching. So that's really nice. Check it on where the one string goes. Check it where the 6 string goes, and that's beautiful. That's exactly what we want. Okay, that step done. Now we got to recrown the frets with a crowning tool, leaving approximately 3/64 crown on top. The crowning tool is this one right here, and it's called the centered Z-file. And what it has is a V right there, and on each side there is diamond, crushed diamond that will crown it, but it'll never hit the center, which is what we want. Okay, so I'm going to repaint the fret. And that'll tell us what's happening with our tool here. So we can see that it's starting to sand the edge of that fret like this. And that's what I want it to do. And that's pretty good. See how it's not totally flat anymore. The two sides are tapered down, and there's a little line of red, a little heavier than a 32nd. That's 3/64 about is what we want. That fret is good. So now we move to the next fret. We have to do this to every fret that we sanded, which is all of them. Just roll it around. I'm going to do a few more on camera. I'm remarking it. Good. Move to the next. I'm going to do that on every fret all the way down. Once that's complete, I'm ready to move to number 7, which is to polish the fret back to its original sheen and remove all the Sharpie also. So we're going to do that progressively with sandpaper. So I've got 220, 400, 600, 1000, 1500, and then finally 2000. So I'm going to start with this 220. And I'm going to polish the sides, right where the Z file hit. And scratched it really badly. I'm trying to avoid the crown. I don't want to be sanding anything off the top that I don't have to. So I'm probably going to leave a finer grit to remove that material. It was 200 grit sandpaper that sanded the top of it, so I'm just matching the sides of the fret. Okay. That's my 220. Now I'm moving up to 400. And this is finer than the sanding beam, so I'll need to remove a little bit off the top just to remove that paint. Now this is when you can see that this masking tape is really a boon, because otherwise I'd be sanding the fretboard, and I don't want to do that. So I'm removing the paint off of there, excessive paint. Now moving up to 600. For the video, I'm demonstrating one fret, but I would do this to every single fret on the board, meaning I'd do 20 all the way down, and then I would do 400 all the way down, and then I would do 600 all the way down, and progressively until they're all completed. This is where the work is. Just time consuming getting these polished up. This is a 600 grit paper that I'm using now. Doing the sides, and then along the top, just barely. Moving to 1000 grit now. Starting to feel like this isn't even sandpaper. It's such a fine tooth. Mm-hmm. 1500 now. Finally 2000. Bring that luster back up. after polishing, I'm going to take some cleaner, and in this case it's mineral spirits, which is paint thinner. And clean off the top of that fret. Right, you can see the buildup of that nickel and stuff on there, metal. And I'm going to do that to every fret on this board.